I want to welcome you in this guided meditation to connect as deeply as you can with your breath and your body as we explore together the energy behind the creation and the evolution of the new program for 2024 called Apothecary. And in this guided audio, I want to give you an experience of what it was like for me to visit the Mayan jungle, the Yucatan in Mexico, which has such an immense history that in fact that very region and the asteroid, the Chicxulub asteroid and resulting crater that formed is actually responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. That asteroid that struck the area where the Mayan jungle sits today was so impactful, far beyond one atomic bomb. Some people say it had the impact of 60 atomic bombs or 100 atomic bombs. It resulted in tsunamis, in pieces of lava that were ejected into the air and landed all over the world, creating additional wildfires. It caused volcanoes to erupt, and there were layers of cloud and ash and molten fire in so many places around the world that one explosion, that one experience, that one intrusion in that area of the world had an impact on all other aspects of the world around it. So as I talk to you today about the jungle and try to give you an essence, a feeling of the magic of that place which inspired this year's program, even though this year's program will cover a wide range of topics and archetypes and medicines and teachings, there was an impact point there, the birthing of a process and the birthing of an imagining of what we could do together that I believe was formed not only on a spiritual plane but also on a physical plane there, and because of the connection, the vibration of that space, which continues to hold that level of magnitude and power. It vibrates in every plant. It vibrates in the rocks. It vibrates as you walk along the beach, and it vibrates in the depths of the jungle. One thing to let you know before I start to take you into a vision of what jungle medicine might hold for us this year is that prior to 55 years ago, this area that today is known as the Riviera Maya was not well populated. It was not a tourist destination. It was, as it is today, beautiful, with jungle on one side and pristine beaches on the other. But it was populated really and only by Mayan natives. So much so that in many regions, the language of Spanish is not spoken, Maya is spoken. And there are still regions in the jungle where there are people who only speak Maya, and there is a separate code of laws, Mayan laws, that are respected by Mexican authorities. And so there's an agreement between people who live in the jungle and follow this code or codex of behavior with these laws, are respected and allowed to practice their traditions, their ceremonies, speak their language, and follow their own laws, because the evolution of the space has been so very recent, and there is immense amount of respect for the Mayan people in the area. That is awe-inspiring, and it's deserved. The word Maya means no pain. Maya means no pain. And one of the gifts of the Mayans, not unlike the Aztecs in other parts of Mexico, is that they are incredible medicine people. They know how to work with the earth. They know how to work with the elements. And because you're in the jungle, which is an incredibly hot, humid, region. It's very difficult to wear much of any clothing. At the minute you walk outside into any environment from indoors, if there's any kind of air conditioning, where there mostly isn't in this region, you are immersed in that moisture. You are part of that water element. And so there's no way to put on clothes or makeup or anything that sort of separates you from the land. You're forced to return to nature in your own embodiment. And I think that's part of the medicine and the process that this place creates. It also demands it and commands it with a level of respect and awe that reminds you what a powerful place you are standing in when you're there. And so, one of the most beautiful aspects of the jungle and the connection of the people to the jungle is where I'll begin this guided visualization for you. Imagine that you hear everyone talking about a storm coming, a huracan, a hurricane coming. And everyone seems frenzied and worried, and in modern day we have news telling us, oh, there could be a hurricane and it could be this proportion or that proportion. But the locals are not worried. They're not concerned. And then you find out why. And it's because in the jungle, the plants respond to a coming hurricane 24 to 48 hours before. They will open their leaves to prepare to receive rain water from the storm. If the plants have not done this, if the birds have not retreated, there is no storm coming. And it's the most accurate weather system. And so it's much easier in a local region like this to trust nature. And in fact, you learn that nature is more accurate than any human system that's created. And so I want you to imagine being in the middle of the lushest possible rainforest you've ever experienced. And if you don't know what that's like, I want you to imagine that as you look up above you, there's a canopy of trees and branches and leaves. As you look around you, there are twisting vines covered in leaves. And the vines almost seem to be braided or woven. They've grown together for so long. And then as you look ahead of you and down, you see that those vines and branches are twisting and weaving and dipping into water, into the rivers and the cenotes, which are unique to Mexico and were actually again caused by the Chicxulub asteroid collision 66 million years ago, because the impact of that asteroid forced the earth to contract and open and create these sinkholes, which are actually all connected. All cenotes in Mexico are connected to each other. So as you look up, you see the branches winding above you and creating canopies over you. And as you look down, you see the branches winding and they're going down into the water. And you see that they're running along, because the water is so clear, they're running along the basin. They're connected and they go down into the sand. So there's this never-ending connection. You can't find where the branches begin. You can't find where they disconnect, because they're so woven into and around each other, and you can't find where they end. And the air around you is so dense and so moist and so hot that it literally is holding you. It becomes an embrace. You can feel the air holding you, holding your back, holding you from the side, holding the front of you. And it forces you to even lift your chin, to lift your face toward the air, toward the sky. And it's such a warm embrace, it's so healing that tension in your muscles dissipates. So if you've been holding tension, it's almost as if the air and the moisture itself is massaging into the deepest of your tissues with no effort and releasing whatever tension, fear, anxiety. For a moment, when you're standing in this place, you forget time. This jungle has existed here for as long as we have record, and was formed by an event so ancient that it predates any of the periods of the dinosaurs. And so you know that here is not only history, but mystery. The teachers, the medicine keepers, the shaman who live here know every plant. As you gaze around, they know every plant, what it does, whether it's best to work with it dried or in its natural raw form. How much to work with, because medicine is always, at the end of the day, about dose. So how much of a plant do you take or work with, and what that scale is. And they can tell how much you should work with by looking at you, by feeling into your vibration. There's an energy in this rainforest, in this jungle, of the reality of a dream state that even they refer to as a fifth dimension, where everything is a dream. Life is a dream, death is a dream, relationships are dreamed into. And we also can dream into things and people and experiences that we haven't had yet. So manifestation is not a word that's used. It's more about what dream becomes activated, what doorway becomes opened. And to access those doorways and to access those portals and those dreams requires the process of working with nature. It's very much believed in the jungle that plants themselves represent the four elements. So you don't have to use fire to represent fire. You don't have to work, as we often do, with smoke to represent air, and you don't have to work with anything in particular to represent water, because the air itself is both air and water. There's so much dense moisture and humidity that it already has, you're surrounded by two elements even as you begin. Plants themselves have seeds that represent earth that get sown and in the jungle are often transported by birds, or the plants will drop their seeds into the earth and a new plant begins to grow. And then the element of fire becomes the ceremony of how we work with these sacred herbs and resins and medicines that come. But fire also represents the fortaleza, the strength of nature herself to create against odds. Fire in the jungle is not just considered a literal force of heat and flame, but it is the energy itself, the energy that propels us, that strengthens us, that perpetuates nature and her shifting and transformation, and the magic of that strength. And then, of course, the animals of the jungle each have their own archetypal energies, and they also represent the elements in their movements and in their embodiment of their particular energy streams, the dream that they represent. In the jungle, the notion of an apothecario, of an apothecary, is a process of aligning with the earth. It's about carrying the medicine with you. It's about honoring the cycles, even though there are not seasons in the jungle the way we think of earth, of winter and spring and summer and fall in traditional ways. There's no snow. The temperature only modulates by a few degrees all year round. There are plants that grow differently in January and February than they do in October and November, and again respond to slight differences in humidity levels or in rainfall as that shifts and ebbs and flows over the course of the year. And the jungle is different in the middle of the day when you can see with your human eyes everything around you than it is at night. When there's a darkness that's so dark that if you want to see, you can struggle to see, but then you have to rely more on your hearing, on the sounds of nature and the birds and the animals and the whistling of the leaves and the movement of the brush, the dripping of the water from the leaves at different elevations into the cenotes, which seem to echo and carry for miles from where you stand. And because time loses its meaning in this space between life and dream, the days sort of melt into each other, where you really can have a moment of thought. Is it Monday? Is it Wednesday? And then, does it matter? There's a constancy and a permanence to this place, this land. And there's a youthfulness and a vitality to the people who are there that likely comes from their connection to the earth, to the purity of the food that they eat. So much of what is eaten in the jungle is grown there. And so the flavors are more intense, the nutrients are more rich, and your body receives the food differently. A constant source of pure water, which keeps your body hydrated at all times through even the most intense of temperatures. Because 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 degrees or 100% humidity is a very intense experience. And yet there's something in your body that wants to receive that intensity and then be refreshed when you dip into the cenote or you drink the fresh water or you eat a piece of ripe fruit. There is a complete synergy, a complete union between the human and nature in the jungle that is difficult to replicate outside of that environment, and the magic that it creates is magnificent. And as vast as the jungle is, it literally seems to go on as far as your eye can see, and as deep as the cenotes go, and as far above you as those branches and canopies grow. There is also an intensely focused appreciation for each cacao bean and cacao seed, for each stalk of rosemary or basil, or even the nuts that grow and come to symbolize the human body in its perfect structure and form. In the cenote, when the shaman approaches with offerings, the fish come and they create a circle around him. And all he's doing is holding his bowl, his beautiful wooden bowl of offerings. And they all come from all directions and make this beautiful arc around his feet where he stands at the edge of the cenote looking down. He closes his eyes and says a prayer in a language so ancient that so few speak it, and yet your soul understands. And then he reaches into his offering bowl, and from the left to the right, slowly scatters a handful of offerings. And the fish receive them with such gratitude. You can see the tiny pieces of rosemary and the peanuts and the basil and the beautiful skin of the fruit and rose petals. And slowly the fish take their offering and retreat back into the water. And it's a ceremony of its own, every day saying thank you to the life that's there. An acknowledgement of the power and the beauty and the synergy between life and land. And for as much as there is deep magic and mystery and alchemy in the creation of offerings and in the harvesting and in the documentation, there's a real call to document how you work with your medicine in the jungle. And that's why we're doing that this year. Each medicine keeper keeps their medicine in unique ways, has special perspectives, unique ways of seeing the world and the value of the tools that we partner with. Noticing how certain medicines are more potent at different moon phases for certain people. Honoring the geometries around us and taking time to interpret them for ourselves. Slowing down to notice the leaves opening in preparation for a storm and feeling compelled to illustrate that in one's book of wisdom. The leaves fall open differently during different seasons of the year, to take in more water or less water, regulating their own needs for hydration. There's a deep intelligence within the plant kingdom that defies explanation. And then even documenting the scents and the sounds and the beauty that defies description. And so sometimes images take the place of words. But in addition to this complexity, this narrativizing, this documenting of magic and medicine and the work of aligning with the plant world and honoring its beauty and its medicine and its magic. There's also a real simplicity, a lot of laughter, a lot of smiling, a lot of emphasis on happiness. That because this life is a dream, it becomes easy to take it more seriously than we should, to forget our role as stewards of it and each other, and to forget how to caretake those relationships and honor the time that we have. The ancestral world is alive in the jungle, and there's always a recognition that the wisdom passed down from generation to generation is valuable. And then also an awareness that how we treat ourselves, our bodies, how we speak to ourselves, how we nourish ourselves, dictates the beauty of the experience we will have. And there's a call in the jungle to nourish differently, hydrate differently, see the spirits of the plants that we eat, the fruits that we eat. And our bodies respond. Better digestion, deeper sleep, softer connections with each other, a more expansive kindness that is authentic, a slower pace. And maybe it is the heat and the intensity that slows one down in the jungle. But I think it's also the energy of what that heat represents for each of us, which is nature's ability and indeed its desire to embrace us, to hold us, to allow the hardened, dried aspects of us to soften and release and let go, and to surrender to great forces that shape lands, shape history. And in that reverence, we find healing. We find our purpose. We find our wisdom. And then we take pleasure in sharing it with others and creating methods of documenting so we can share it with future generations. And they can, in turn, receive our wisdom and adapt it for their new ways of thinking and being, and perhaps build on the magic that we begin. And so it is the beauty of the jungle, where Apothecary was born. I spent hours trying to document everything I saw and felt and experienced and capture it in some way, and I realize now so much of it is just in my soul. I find myself going back to photographs more than anything that I took while I was there, or holding a shell that I found on the beach at sunset, or the really rare double cacao bean I was gifted in the jungle, shaped like a heart, the medicine of love. That nature herself, images of her, which will go into my book of wisdom, and her fruits, her offerings, are perhaps the best record keepers of the wisdom that we seek. Aho, and on we go. From the jungle to wherever you are, may this year give you a taste, a sense of the magic that lives in these divine places. May you travel there yourself one day if you haven't already. But for now, I believe you can travel through this experience. And my intention is that your life will be richer for it. Aho.